everyone. I'm Aparna, and on behalf of the Sarmaya Arts Foundation, I welcome you to Sarmaya Talks at JOS. In today's edition of Sarmaya Talks, our speakers will focus on narratives from the annals of history, music, and dance. I would like to now introduce our first speaker for the evening. Vidya Shah is a singer, musician, and composer. She is a recipient of the Charles Walls Award and a senior fellowship from the Government of India for her project Women on Record, a performance highlighting the contributions of the forgotten women performers of the gramophone era. She has received the Tagore Scholarship 2023 from the Government of India for her work on Bhakti poets. She is the author of Jalsa, Indian Women's Journey from the Salon to the Studio, and Nadaswaram, The Sound of Gods, a book for young adults. Vidya made her Bollywood debut in the film Manto. She is the director of Bhuma Trust, a set-up to preserve and promote the intangible heritage of India. Vidya, the stage is yours.
Good evening. Namaskar. Adab. It's such a beautiful space and it lends itself to a mehfil. So I'm very excited to be here to be speaking about the women who were, who were the queens of the salon or were known for their performances at mehfils. Now the irony here is that the Women on Record project is really about how performance intersected with technology. It's about when the gramophone came into our listening experience. But having said that, I have to completely submit here that I'm very nervous about tech myself. So if I'm going to struggle a little bit with all the visuals that I have here, like they say, Gustakhi pehle se hi maafi chahti hu aapse कि थोड़ा सा इधर उधर हो जाए तो please bear with me. Just a little about how this project started. So a little over 10 years ago, as Aparna just said, I'm a singer, so I was performing in one of Delhi's usual venues, the India International Center. And sometimes you just feel good after a concert. It was one of those days. But there was this gentleman who came up to me at the end of the concert and he gave me a couple of cassettes. He had already gone beyond the cassette era, but he still gave me these two cassettes and he said, "Ye suno, ye hota hai asli gana." So I was very taken aback and I just felt like I had finished 90 minutes of Asli Gana on stage and he just sort of dismissed it and he said, "Ye suno." So I was a bit sort of taken aback and even a little angry at his sort of confidence. Took the cassettes home and let them lying somewhere, refusing to even look at them for the longest time. Until one day there was some spring cleaning that had to be done and, I saw the cassettes again and, I felt like, okay, let me just see kya hai isme, asli kya hai isme gana. And these were pre-recorded cassettes with very, very detailed notes on the inlay. So I tried to read what was written there and I could just see a whole bunch of names. I did recognize a few. I mean, there was Akhtari Bai on that, there was Gohar Jan on that. So some of those names, yes. But then there was also Umda Jan and Hingan Bai and Babli Bai and so on and so forth. Tara Jan of Khadag, Mehboob Jan of Sholapur. So it set me off on this, complete curiosity that who are these people? And it became particularly interesting for me because the songs that were written against these names are what we tend to learn from our gurus. So for example, there was Zohrabai Agrewali, there was a lovely bandish in the Rag Puriya, which is Raja Suno Dastgir Peer Mori Raja Suno, so on and so forth. And I have learned this Bandish, and I don't know who Zohrabai Agrewali is. I have heard of Ambale Wali, but now who is this? So there began this search for the stories behind these names. And I have to tell you that one of the things I realized early on while I took on this journey, this muhim, was the one thing that was relatively easier for me to find was the music. There were a lot of the recordings which I could, deargoogle.com, I could find a lot of the songs. But when I tried to figure out who these women were, and if they are singing what we celebrate as Pakka Gana, Asli Gana, so on and so forth, then kinse sikha, who were their gurus? What was their gharana? Where did they come from? Why did so many of them have names of towns and cities attached to them? So this was really what set off the beginning of Women on Record. And the title is really Women Who Sang on the Gramophone Record. But it's also putting these women on record. Who were they? Where did they come from? And how have they contributed to the social history of Indian music? Women in the 78 RPM era have made a significant contribution to Hindustani music, as well as to Urdu prose and poetry. And these very women, this community of women, then also transitions into theatre and talkies, which we call film, cinema. In spite of their very rigorous skill, in spite of their fantastic talent, some of them were truly brilliant, there's only a few who earned themselves a considerable reputation, or only a few of them became singers of considerable repute. This is partly also because of the socio-cultural constraints that they met with in the 20th century. And part of what happens in the 20th century, in the early 20th century, more towards the 30s, as we are as the nationalist movement gets more and more active, is that the music it moves into other sections of society. It moves into what I will definitely put this in quotes, what becomes the more respectable classes of society. We'll discuss why this happens. But I just want to begin with a little backdrop on the beginning of recording itself. I promise you it won't be too intense, but just to give you a context, a very quick dateline. So in 1877, the first cylinder records were invented by Thomas Alva Edison, and this, which sold at a princely amount of $18 at that time, it came with a remark that said, "This should talk." These cylinders continued to be in the market well into the first decade of the 20th century. Then in 1898, Emil Berliner, he introduced what became very celebrated as the 78 RPM records, but he introduced what were called the flat discs. And his assistant was William Gaisberg, a name worth noting because it was Gaisberg, an American-born engineer, who actually comes to India with the sole objective of setting up a music market. Now, Gaisberg, in 1902, he starts what he calls in his memoirs a Far Eastern expedition, in which India was the first and most important stop. Although the Orient was different for him, if not a difficult territory, he was full of a missionary zeal. Leaving Britain to gain vital foothold in India, he says that as we steamed down the channel into the unknown, I felt a bit like Marco Polo starting out on his journeys. Soon after arriving in Kolkata, Gersberg found that the Englishman who was his liaison person, he actually had no clue about Indian melodies at all. So he didn't know what to do musically or commercially. Therefore, he resorted to look for a first-hand experience of listening to singers, understanding their songs, trying to figure out who these patrons were. All of this he thought would be useful in setting up the office of the Gramophone and Typewriter Company Limited Records. Now, although he feels very positive about this and he starts looking for talent, it is in about 1899, before he does his first commercial recording with Gohar Jaan, Gersberg, along with his assistant, George Dilnut, they were the recording engineers of the company. They're invited to a soiree with 2 dancing girls. And this was at the Classic Theatre in Kolkata, in Calcutta actually in those days. Their names were Shoshimukhi and Fani Bala. He describes them, again in his memoirs, he says they were these 2 little nautch girls aged 14 and 16 with utterly miserable voices. In 1908, but he already finds them, and subsequently on 14th of November, in 1902, he is led to find the diva of that period, Gohar Jaan, and on 14th of November in 1902, in a small makeshift studio in Kolkata, they do the first ever commercial recording in the history of Indian music with Gohar Jaan. Now what starts in 1902 very quickly picks up through various gramophone tours and several other record labels also which come into the country. So in 1908, I'm sorry, dates are very important in this whole phenomenon because you will see how gradually it sort of leads into the building up of a market, but also very quickly into sidelining the divas who went into the making of this market. In 1908, the Gramophone Company Limited built a disc record factory at Beliaghata Road in Sialda in Kolkata, and its official opening was celebrated with a concert by none other than Gohar Jaan. Now, most of the labor force was drawn from the local community, and they referred to this factory as Baja Khana, as though it was the Gymkhana of sound, says Gersberg. Indian entrepreneurs took to this, they saw the commercial potential in this, and they also jumped onto this very quickly. Vallabh Das, Ranchhod Das of Bombay, Hemendra Mohan Bose of Calcutta, and Maharaja Lal and Sons of Delhi, they saw the commercial potential of the phonograph and the cylinder recordings and opened up agencies for marketing the products of the most well-known providers, including Columbia, Edison, and Pathé Records. Now I would like to play you a short video, and it was recorded in a badi, in a Zamindar's Haveli in Calcutta. I'm getting a bit mixed up with this Calcutta, Kolkata, Mumbai, Bombay thing, so please, just like Calcutta. And this badi is where in the year 1943, eventually, the All Bengal Music Conference is heard. And in this very badi, you will see also in the video that I play that there were all the greats of Indian music who performed in this very space. Gohar Jaan performed there as well. So I'm going to play you a video from the badi where she's also, and there are all these portraits of all these artists which adorn the walls of the badi, and somehow there are many such spaces in places like Calcutta and Lucknow and even Patna where the space is frozen in time. They don't change the look of that salon. They don't change the look of where the mehfil might have been. So you have silver furniture, you have an old telephone which is kept there. So it's kind of interesting how these baddies continue to to hold on to that memory. Although the people who live there currently are not particularly comfortable admitting or acknowledging that these mehfils were held or these baijis came and performed there, and we'll know why as soon as I successfully play this video. I have to warn you, the sound will be quite unpleasant because it's an old recording that we've used. So at the end of this recording, so as I said, this this video is created out of stills which were taken at this badi in Kolkata. And at the end of the recording, she says something. I don't know if you could hear what she said. Could you make out what she said? She says, absolutely, you're right, but she says, my name is Gauhar Jan Champion. So she really was, quite a champion. But before we talk a little more about her, you see this was the beginning of the shellac discs. And we already had enough, local interest. People started getting to know about this machine, about this thing which was producing sound, where you could listen to music. So there was like a general curiosity, but there was also a sort of a colloquial lingo which which started emerging around this. So for example, the discs were called tawas in North India. They were called tawa. And the gramophone was called the tawe wala baja. Yeah? And then there were also more Hindiized versions of, so almost like Sanskritized versions, like there was this Dhwani Mudrika, Dhwani Pattika, which basically means the ring of sound, and the tape, Pattika, Dhwani Pattika, the tape of sound. So there was also this kind of a curiosity, and sort of, people began to become more interested in this. And, a lot of trivia also started emerging. So one riddle, for example, in Hindi was, Roti ek lagati chakkar, us par rakha bhala. Roti ek lagati chakkar, us par rakha bhala. Jhom jhom dayan surme kati, roti ka hai muh kala. Right? So, I mean, I think the answer is quite clear there. Plus, there was a lot of commercial interest being generated, therefore advertisements in newspapers for the kind of music that the records were selling, or the kind of machines that were available. I'm going to play you a series of these advertisements that appear in the first and the second decade of the 20th century. That was Ghoshbari, where this happens. You will see that these ads are not merely in English, they are in all kinds of Indian languages, and depending on where the ads are put out, it will also talk about the kind of music. So, for example, in the South, the interest that the market was, the market was set around the interest in spiritual music. So, a lot of the ads would talk about Kirtanamala, for example, or there are ads in Gujarati which talk about Garba Sangeet. There are, otherwise there are bhajans written on it. There's actually, like you see here, it talks about gramophone dance programs. And then, of course, Odeon came up with this, the talking machine. But there were also silly songs that people were singing. So, so there was this song, I don't have my Tanpura Baja, etc. So I'm just, Survur ka mujhe kuch ऐसे ही गा दे रही हूँ मैं आपके लिए कि एक हमारे दोस्त हैं दिल्ली में, उनके यहाँ लखनऊ में ये गाना गाया करते थे। पहने कुर्ता पर पतलून, आधा फागुन आधा जून, पहने कुर्ता पर पतलून, आधा फागुन आधा जून, बाबा पूर्वी धुन में गाए, बाबा पूर्वी धुन में गाए, बेटा फिल्मी गीत सुनाए, बाबा पूर्वी धुन में गाए, बेटा फिल्मी गीत सुनाए, घर माँ बाजे ग्रामोफोन, आधा फागुन आधा जून, घर माँ बाजे ग्रामोफोन, आधा फागुन आधा जून, पहने कुर्ता पर पतलून, आधा फागुन आधा जून। तो खैर इस तरह के भी तो the point is that this was not just about recording a certain kind of music. It was not just about being classical music or ख्याल ही गा रहे हैं या गज़ल ही गा रहे हैं. हर किस्म का गाना जो है, it was about the market. So the market had many possibilities. And when we look at the discographies, which is actually pretty much one of the only, or perhaps the only source to say that these are the listings and these are the songs that were sung on these particular records, which is where you also find names of this is a Tamil advertisement from a magazine which is, I don't know if there are any Tamilians here, but there's this magazine which is still sold. This says Gramophone Kirtanamritam. This ad says. Anyway, so the point is that there were several kinds of songs that were being recorded, and as is the case today, some songs sold more than other songs. So some were quote unquote commercially more viable, but there were also some women who had become champions of classical music on the record. And in this regard, I mean, of course, we all talk about Gauhar Jaan, but then there was also Zohrabai Agrewali. Now, Zohrabai Agrewali didn't live very long, but in the short, 25, 30 years of her life, she had recorded about 60 songs, which were also reissued in her lifetime. And legendary artists like Ustad Fayaz Khan Sahab, Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Sahab, they all mention in their memoirs that they would repeatedly listen to her singing and feel very inspired by it. Yeah? So, Zohrabai managed to pack into 3 minutes. So the 78 RPM was a 3-minute format, right? She managed to pack into this 3-minute format all crucial elements that go into the making of a khayal. Now, I'm sure this wonderful audience here will know that khayal gaiki is about languor. Khayal gaiki is about taking your time with a rag, right? It's like what you start with is called a vilambit. Vilamb comes from the idea of delaying, right? So taking your time is the core idea of developing a thought, which is khayal gaiki. But the fact that the 78 RPM would only give you 3 minutes, a lot of the women singers were willing to take on this challenge. They were willing to take on this challenge of saying, okay, if this is the time I have, how do I treat my alap, bandish, तानकारी etc. that goes into the making of a complete ख्याल. आपको मैं एक बहुत सुंदर ज़ोहराबाई आग्रेवाली का एक तराना सुनाती हूँ. A tarana which is in the rag Bhoop. One second. This is the Bhoop tarana. So obviously the quality of the recording is very garbled, and this is probably how it must have been, and not many of these recordings have been digitally cleaned up. So this is Zohrabai with that child on her lap. That's her. So you can see here she's incorporated all the elements. There is alap, there's a little bit of, she's doing a little bit of barat in the rag Bhoop, which is the rag in which she's singing the tarana. And then she does a sargam. And then she does a tankari. So everything is built into these 3 minutes, and she really. So initially when the recording started, there were these wax cylinders, right? So you had to actually put your head into a wax horn, and embed your voice was embedded on that wax. And then in the initial years when we could not publish it in India, it would be taken to other countries. Hanover, for example, in Germany was an important center which published Indian records. So to be able to put your, coming from a tradition where you're singing to a wonderful audience like this, which is going, wah, kya baat hai, so on and so forth, suddenly you're putting your head into a cylinder and you don't know what's happening to your voice, right? But women in the gramophone era were willing to take on this enterprise also because they came from certain struggles. A lot of them came from Tawaif backgrounds and transitioned into becoming baijis or singing ladies, as my dear friend Salim Kidwai translated it. What happened to the men? Because clearly this system of music is largely male dominated. There were many ustads at that time, and what happened to them when the gramophone came to the market? So clearly it was a mixed response, and for a lot of them they saw it both as a threat, but they also could see opportunity in it. Now many great masters like Pandit Vishnu Digambar Paluskar, Bal Krishna Bua, Ichhal Karanjikar, Bhaskar Bua Bhakle, Aladia Khan Sahab, several other renowned musicians of that period did not record for several reasons, of which some feared that their work would be stolen and passed off as someone else's. So when you're in a gharana, your repertoire is really, it belongs to only your gharana. So if you put it on the record, then they felt it was beneath them to actually sell it, and in the process, of course, somebody else might steal it and make it their own. Also, many of them had an inhibition that acoustic technology, or later when the microphone comes into the picture, if given a chance, would secretly siphon off all the goodness and power of their voice, just as making soup out of meat and vegetables rob them of their nutrients. So all these sort of exaggerated descriptions come from memoirs of the recording engineers, but the fact of the matter is that the records that were made by the women sold better than the few records that were done by the male ustads. There were a couple of men. So for example, there's a very famous 1905 recording of this ustad, Abdul Karim Khan Sahab, who again had a very mellifluous voice. Then there was one of the male singers who was reasonably popular, was called Pyara Sahib. Pyara Sahib, again, in the description of these recordings, it is said that he sells well because his voice sounds like a female. Then there was a lovely Master Madan who only recorded 8 songs, and of course he died really very young, but you probably know that ghazal which became hugely popular because it was on the record. यूं न रह कर हमें तरसाइए, आइए आ जाइए, यूं न रह कर हमें तरसाइए. This is a very famous ghazal that was recorded by this young child called Master Madan. Khair, the point of the matter is that there were very few men who were recorded, and of them only 1 or 2 really made it big. But that's not to say that all the women were willing to record also. There were some women who were very reticent, who were not happy about this machine coming into their lives. For example, someone who lived for the longest time and was a superb patron of musicians in Bombay, Anjani Bai Malpekar. You hardly find any recordings of her. Then the other very well-known singer, Tarabai Shirodkar, who also comes from the family of Shruti Shadolikarji, who is one of the leading lights of Khayal Gaiki today. She was not comfortable with recording. Even Kesar Bai Kerkar, the legendary voice of Kesar Bai Kerkar comes to us only in recordings when she's much older. She was also not very comfortable with the idea of recording for the 78th. I want to just share a little incident which was documented in some interview where the Kirana maestro, Gangubai Hangal, she recalls her experiences of recording, where she says that for my first recording, when HMV, His Master's Voice, which is one of the most celebrated record companies, invited me to Bombay, I went because they were taking care of my journey and my sightseeing there. Later, after my third recording, they gave me rupees 400. But my family was very annoyed because my name read on the record as Gandhari Hubli and not Gangubai Hangal. She says that nowadays recordings take place all 12 months of the year. This is an interview from the 50s. Nowadays recordings take place for all 12 months of the year. It was not so then. The His Master's Voice people had one engineer who had to come from London. He had to be here while the recording took place for over 2 months of that year. It didn't happen at just any time. So like this, we would keep coming every year for those 2 months to record for them. So this is how, the recording companies slowly dug their feet into India and created what became a very, very commercially viable enterprise. But this name thing was a big challenge. Like Gangubai mentions in this interview, there were several artists, who didn't have the confidence of, say, Gauhar Jan to say, my name is Gauhar Jan Champion, and announce their name at the end of the record. But some didn't even realize that the names might get lost. One such name was a legendary singer. I mean, most of them were legendary singers who became popular, that is, and one of them was this woman called Kamla Jharia. Some of you may have heard of her, but she came from Kolkata, and she was famous not only for singing ghazal, she also sang beautiful thumris. She also sang Nazrul Giti, Ramdasi Giti. So, all kinds of genres she became popular for. Kamla Jharia was in one such makeshift studio, either it was in Calcutta or in Patna, I can't remember clearly, and she sings a beautiful thumri, which I think you can find online, which is goes somewhat like, I'm a singer, so I'm sorry, I like to sort of just illustrate by singing a line or two. Also the kind of thumris that were sung. Now what we celebrate as thumri singing with amazing musicians like Vidushi Girja Devi ji is another style of singing thumri. Earlier on the records it was more like Piya nahi aaye, Chand na suhaye, Piya nahi aaye, Beran nindiya aaj lage, Chand na suhaye. पपीहा बोल पिया आज सखी रो रो कर, खिली जो गुल की कली टूट पड़ी मुरझा कर, खिली जो गुल की कली टूट पड़ी मुरझा कर, बिरहा न लगी हाय पड़ी हाय मुझ पर, सही ना ही जाए, हाँ सही ना ही जाए, जरे मोरी छतियाँ पिया नाही आए। तो ये पहले उसको बहलाना, फिर उसमें एक शेर कुछ इस तरह से जोड़ देना. This was very typical of that time. In fact, even ghazals were sung like geet. They were not sung so much like what, say, Hariharan Sahib would do today. They were sung like songs, and yet all these things became really popular. And in the discographies, when you look at the kind of songs that were recorded, the number of genres that were recorded, we don't know. I mean, I can say with fair surety that half of these genres have gone out of the performative space, or even what we can try and find online, for example. कई सारी ऐसे चीज़, जैसे आप ख्याल ठुमरी, दादरा, गज़ल, सोज़खानी, सब कुछ रिकॉर्ड किया है. भावगीति, लक्षण गीत, everything is recorded. But then there's also something called a Qawwal Giti. We don't know what that is. There's something called a Sorat. We're not sure what that might be. You know, so there are so many things that we have lost, and we have not been able to adequately document. And in the process of losing out on all this, we've also not been able to adequately acknowledge the presence of women on the record. Anyway, so what happens in the 30s? I have to keep track of time, so slightly fast forwarding. What happens in the 30s is that sound comes to cinema. And, you know, when it does come to cinema, the first film that has sound is Alamara. It's the first sound film, and the impact was both immediate and dramatic, they say. For one thing, it ran at Majestic Cinema House full for 7 weeks. In a sense, Indian music went even more commercial with sound coming to cinema. Alamara was made under the banner of Imperial Films Company, featuring Vitthal and Zubeda in the lead. And even before Alamara, Zubeda had a very successful career. There's an entire film that has been made on her. Had a very successful career as an actress in silent films like Kala Nag, Veer Abhimanyu, and then she also acted in one called Sacrifice. Astonishingly, from its beginning, Indian cinema was very open, and the first talkie itself had some very sort of happening love scenes. But beginning in 1912, when Indian produced silent films were screened, what also happened along with that was there used to be a harmonium and tabla, which was musically accompanying this film. So while there was no sound in the film, there was live accompaniment happening along with it. But what happens in the 30s, very soon after Alamara happens, is that the idea of borrowed voice comes to the talkies. Now, borrowed voice is what we today call playback singing. Yeah? So, the first film that used playback was a new theatre's Hindi production called Dhoop Chhaon. It was made around the same time in Bengali as well, and it was called Bhagya Chakra. It was directed by Nitin Bose, and the music for this film was given by R.C. Boral and Pankaj Malik. Yeah? So these are names that, stay with us even today. In this film, there are a few songs, but then there's also this other woman music director. For the first time, this was Pankaj Malik, but for the first time, Hindi cinema also sees a woman music director. Her name is Saraswati Devi. Saraswati Devi uses this technique in a Bombay Talkies film, which is called Jawani Ki Hawa. And the year again, as I mentioned, was 1935. The song she sings is on her own sister who's acting in the film, whose name is Chandraprabha. So, just as a little trivia, one of the songs that became very famous in the voice of Kishore Kumar from the film Jhumru, Koi Humdam Na Raha, I'm sure you all know that song. It was actually meant to be sung by Ashok Kumar in another film for which Saraswati Devi was doing the music, in a film called Jeevan Naiya. Yeah? She herself comes from a very interesting background. She was actually Khurshid Minocher Homji. That was her name. And she was one of those early 20th century Parsi women who aspired to be, the gentlewoman. Yeah? She wore Victorian style blouses, she wore stockings, she wore pearls. She was educated and she was practiced in the art of conversing in English. And yet, she also learned to sing the Dhrupad and the Dhamar. Eventually, she opts to work in the Hindi film industry, but she also comes from a family that was a Parsi community, Parsi, Gayan, Uttejak Mandali, a community which was very keen to support more interest in Indian classical music. She, of course, also went to the famous Bhatkhandi College in Morris College, actually, in Lucknow, and she was classmates with Jaddan Bai. Yeah, Jaddan Bai, we all know, was Nargis's mother. For the younger people here, Sanjay Dutt's grandmother. Again, became a very successful movie producer, Jaddan Bai. She set up a company called Sangeet Movie Tone. And it's interesting to note that Jaddan Bai, in a very considered fashion, decides not to teach, not to encourage rather, Nargis to become a singer-dancer. She says, and this is the 30s that we're looking at, she says कि अब इसमें वो बात नहीं रहेगी जो talkies में रहेगी. So she grooms Nargis to be an actor, right? So it is around this time that, you know, somebody had asked me, like, what happens to these women on the record, just before so it is around this time when combined with the nationalist movement, the presence of the gramophone and the anonymity that the gramophone offers makes it possible for other people to enter the stream of performance. So what do I mean when I say this? पहले ये होता था कि जो बाई गाती है, she would sing for a very celebrated, for a, you know, for an important audience. They were invited to present soirees in the homes of zamindars or rajas, maharajas. In fact, one of the important singer in this regard was a woman called Janki Bai Ilhabad. She was also called Janki Bai Chappan Churi. Now, I mean, you know, why names come into place is a thing of oral history. Abhi isme I cannot find you a source which says why she was called Chappan Churi, but there are a couple of quirky things which suggest she became Chappan Churi because there were 56 men running after her. Or she became Chappan Churi because there was this one spurned lover who tried to stab her 56 times. So, left to your imagination, you can choose whichever story you like. But Janki Bai was a phenomenal woman because in the 20s, when the microphone comes into our lives, she is doing very well on the record. She's selling very well. So there are several record companies which say they would like to sign her up. And she says no. I am not going to be bound by the contracts that these record companies give me. I think there's a lot of inspiration that artists like us can draw from her even today. To have stood up and said that I am not going to sign excruciating exploitative contracts is, I think, quite phenomenal to have done it at the time that she did. But legend goes that Janki Bai was not fair and lovely. Well, some things we will continue to obsess about forever, and I'm talking about the 20s, when she felt, मैं तो बहुत सांवली हूँ, सांवली यानी not गोरा. But who cares? She was doing really well. तो उनको the Raja of Rewa invites her to a performance, to a महफिल. उनके घर में या तो कोई शादी थी या कोई बच्चा पैदा हुआ था, one of those celebratory reasons. So he sends an ardli. He says उनको बोल दीजिए कि इस दिन आ जाएंगी और वो गाएंगी. The ardli arrives there and says कि आपको महाराज ने बुलाया है, आप इस दिन आ जाइए. So she says okay, लेकिन मेरी एक ही शर्त है. I just have this one condition. And he says okay, what is it? I will convey to the Maharaja. She says, I will sit behind a veil and sing. मैं पर्दे के पीछे ही बैठ के गाऊंगी, पर्दे के सामने नहीं आऊंगी. So this fellow doesn't understand, you know, what's the big deal about this. He goes back, conveys this to whoever is setting up that mehfil, and they say, okay, they set up a parda. She sits behind it, and she sings. And the Maharaja is completely blown away by this singing. Patron being the patron, he says, "Arey inko hazir karo, bring her in front of me." She says, "But that was the only condition that I had, that I will not appear before you. I will sit behind a veil and sing. मैं आपके सामने नहीं आऊँगी." Maharaja is getting angry because nobody said this to him before. So he's absolutely नहीं, आपको आना ही होगा. So to that she says, "Maharaj, फनकार की सूरत नहीं, सीरत देखी जाती है." You don't go by the physical attributes of an artist, you go by their creative character. So there's a lot of legend, there's a lot of anecdote, there's a lot of stories attached to these beautiful voices. And I have to say that not all of them were drop dead gorgeous. You know, there is this whole assumption sometimes, or a presumption that we make, oh, तवाइफ्स क्या खूबसूरत रही होंगी. बहुत सारी ज़रूरी नहीं है कि सब खूबसूरत रही हों, और बहुतों ने बहुत स्ट्रगल भी किया. Many of them, even Gohar Jan, I mean, you know, of course, if we talk about the gramophone era, the first name that everybody knows about in today's time, young, old, whatever, everybody will talk about a Gohar Jan, right? But it wasn't so easy even for her. She was a court musician in several places, and finally she arrives in Mysore, where in the 50s she falls terribly sick and she has nobody by her side when she dies. So this is also the unfortunate truth about a lot of Baijis. I would like to also mention a little bit, I have abandoned my PowerPoint, as you can see. I would also like to talk a little bit about, you know, I've mentioned the nationalist movement and how that affected women and the performative spaces. So one of the things I said was that the record or the recording itself offers an anonymity. The other thing that also happened was that the listening space was democratized. It was not reduced to a few, you know, elite, rich people. A lot of people now were able to listen to the music through the record. And in fact, they say कि gramophone की भी swaris होती थी. People used to collect around a machine and listen to records, like a gramophone की महफिल. But around this time, a lot of these women who were doing reasonably well, who had made reasonable amounts of money, also participated in the nationalist movement. So Gohar Jan, we know, contributed to the Congress party. There's another famous story where at the Congress Maidan, she's promised that Gandhiji will arrive at this meet, and she says that she will do a concert, and half of the proceeds of the concert will be donated to the Congress for its work. Gandhiji doesn't arrive, so she says, मैं नहीं दूंगी अपने पैसे, वो क्यों नहीं आए मुझे से. तो ये भी थी गौहर जान. फिर Jadan Bai supported the progressive writers movement. Several singers, even in other parts of the country, would give refuge to people who were running away from the police, or to them who were, you know, not wanting to get arrested. Kanan Devi, for example, was one of those people who sets up a shelter. So many of them, then there was also Lalita Bai of Banaras, who was actually called Charkhe Wali Bai, क्योंकि वो चरखा चलाती थी. Husna Bai, who was chosen as the president of the Tawaif Sabha, a nationalist effort for the uplift of singing women. So one of the things that the Bais did, they would produce little booklets of songs. So you may wonder, at a time when we didn't have social media, where mobility was restricted, you know, how did they contribute? So these little booklets, which sometimes would have these kinds of songs, would travel with them and go to other parts of the country. So that was also an important contribution that they made to the nationalist movement. In fact, there is, in this book by Amritlal Nagar called Ye Kothe Waliyan? Yes. So, Atul Bhai would know, of course. So in that book, there is a song which is attributed to Husna Bai, कि 1929 में बनारस में कोई कांग्रेस हुई थी जिसमें उन्होंने ये चीज़ गाई. उसके सारे मुझे, I don't have all the words, but it's a beautiful song. चुन चुन के फूल ले लो अरमाए रह न जाए, ये हिंद का बगीचा गुलजार रह न जाए. तो ये एक बहुत लंबा गाना है जो उन्होंने बनाया था. फिर और भी गाने थे, चरखे पे गाने बनाए गए थे और वगैरह वगैरह, प्लस monetary contributions. They would also set aside money. So I think it's also very important to acknowledge the fact that they felt very much a part of the democracy that was emerging at that time. But because of these socio-political changes that were happening across the country, you see, reform was also a very integral part of this movement, right? So because of all these changes, slowly they were moved out of the mainstream as other people came into the picture. And further, when even post-independence or just before that, when institutions like the All India Radio, you know, Sarkari institutions, when they come into place, they further marginalize these women. There are many reports which suggest this, that, you know, there was a time in the early 50s when there was a random decision taken that only married women can perform, you know. So some of them then took on titles like like Devi, Begum, so on and so forth. Yeah. So to find ways to circumvent these kinds of limitations or problems. So therefore it becomes even more relevant or significant to acknowledge contributions that women made to the social history of music, and the fact that we need to keep looking for who they were is something that I always put out to my audiences, to say कि आपके पास कोई कहानी है तो ज़रूर मेरे साथ share करिएगा. I think the more we share, the more we celebrate the music that they've given to us. I would like to just finish this with one final old ghazal which was recorded by someone whose life I'm deeply inspired by. I learned with her student, Begum Akhtar. Begum Akhtar's student, Shanti Hiranand, was my Guruji. So I've had the pleasure and the honor of, you know, getting to know Akhtari through Shanti ji. And ये जो गाना है, आप इसको सुनेंगे तो शायद आपको लगेगा, you'd probably get a feel of, you know, the sadness that the community felt as they faded away, God knows into where, when we are well into the 20th century. So I finished this evening with this ghazal by Akhtari by Faizabad. अख्तरी की गज़ल चालू नहीं होगी तो फिर मुझे कुछ और गाना पड़ेगा. हाँ. वॉल्यूम बढ़ा दीजिए थोड़ा सा प्लीज. Band kar dijiye. Thank you. Band kar dijiye. So she says, ये बेखुदी का तकाजा है, ये बेखुदी की कसम. So thank you very much, and if you have any questions.
Subscribe to Sarmaya and be a part of the stories and conversations around art, history, and culture.